talking today about one of my favorite books. It is a classic book called, it's by Dale Carnegie, and it's called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I have my really beat up old copy of it here. My son has actually been carrying it around in his backpack. He actually took it abroad to study this year in Singapore, and I think it got caught in a couple rainstorms, but he brought it back safe and sound, my copy of it. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this book is that this book was written in 1936 in the depths of the Great Depression here in the United States. And I love the wisdom that's in it. And I apply it all the time. And I like to go back and periodically reread various chapters of the book. So I wanted to talk about two of the principles inside the book and talk about how I think they are so relevant today, especially for you disruptive leaders that are out there trying to create huge amounts of change in your organizations, in your community, and also in society. There are so many problems in this world that need to be addressed, and we need every single tool at our disposal. And I think this is definitely one of the best ones. So the reason why I think Dale Carnegie and his work is so great is that he really focused on this fundamental question: what allows people to get along? What is it that people do? What is it that they say? How do they think and approach the world that gets people to like them? And it's so important because when you get people to like you, it's not just so you can sell to them. It's because you are developing a relationship with them. And the one thing that I talk about constantly, the connective tissue in all of my work, is how do we get along? How do we develop better relationships with each other? You do this as humans to humans. And even if you're in a company, it's not a brand that does this and connects with people. It's people at that brand, at that company, that are connecting with people and forming those relationships. So what Dale Carnegie talks about is how to win friends and influence people. It's really about how, at the core, do you develop better relationships? And we could all use better relationships. So if you're tuning in live, I'd love for you to say where you're coming from. If you read the book, sounds like quite a few of you have. What is your favorite part about the book, if you have read it? And then also, as we go through here, just talk about how these two key principles I'm going to talk about really help you become a better disruptive leader. So one of the things I do want to say is welcome some of the people. So Freddie, great to have you here, help you be sharing. And Harry, fantastic for you to be joining us too as well. Peter, so glad that you love this book. And Jeff, my good friend Jeff, you're saying that you read it 30 years ago and still remember many of his stories. I think we may have read this at the same time when we were in school together. Leslie, great for you to join us from San Francisco. Sarah, fantastic. You read it a while ago. And also Beat TV. So glad that you believe in this. So let me talk about the two principles that I think are really relevant today. The first one is become genuinely interested in other people. And this is the very first principle about how to get people to like you. And I think this is so key. There was a webinar last night with a group that I belong to called YPL with Van Jones, the TV commentator on CNN. And one of the things he talked about was the need right now in this moment, especially with so many things going on with the political discourses, with the whole issues around racial and social injustice happening. There's a tremendous amount of people talking past each other. And what's really needed right now in all of these areas is for us to take the time to slow down and to be practicing active listening. And this is really important because, as Dale Carnegie says it, the way you develop relationships is when you're genuinely interested in other people. And that requires that we really, really listen to them, truly listen to them so that we can understand and see them and know them, really help them feel like they are being known. I love what the Greek philosopher Epictetus said. He has this famous quote: you're born with 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that you can listen twice as much as you speak. This is wisdom again through the ages. Epictetus, you have Dale Carnegie, you have Van Jones, you have all these people who are talking about the importance of listening. And as a leader, as a disruptive leader, somebody who wants to drive exponential change, this is not about you standing at the front of the stage and talking at people. If anything, we need to take more time to listen to where people are coming from so that we understand the challenges that they have and are able to then frame the things that you are thinking about, the ways that you are thinking in the ways that they understand things. And when people feel like they're seen and heard, when you have that relationship with them, they will follow you to the ends of the earth. So this is the foundation of great leadership. It's to be able to listen to the people around us and not only listen, really have them feel like you are listening to them and that you be able to play back. This is the part about active listening, to be able to play back to them and help them see that you actually heard them. The one thing that I think more of us want than anything else is to be seen and to known in this time when so many things are happening, for somebody to have taken the time to stop, to listen, to try to understand where I'm coming from is probably the best gift that you could ever have. So one of the things to practice this is, especially if you are a leader and you are in meetings day in, day out, and you're being expected to show up as a leader and to take charge and get things done, you actually might try something different. Encourage you to time yourself, or ask a colleague, ask a friend to have them time you for the amount of time that you are speaking. Just time it, just track it a little bit, and see how much of that time you're speaking versus you are listening. And this should be, again, twice as much time spent listening as talking. And if you're not even coming close, then you need to start shutting up and listening. So try that. Give it a sense. Are you doing a good job of truly listening, and listening not just with your ears, but also with your heart? So just want to again say hello to a couple other people. We got Michael saying, yep, totally believe in this. Darnpreet is chiming in saying that you love this book, right after some of the Robert Greene books, which I need to go and check out. Matthew is saying, definitely read this again. Ira, lovely that you're saying curiosity and empathy, which is my next point. Ira, you're reading my mind. Jason, you are such an overachiever. Jason is sharing that he read this book when he was 10. And I love that you read this. Really, it's a great book, lots of stories, but still reading this at 10, this is great. You started doing that development at a really early age. And I think Anja is also saying that their previous manager, the CIO, actually had the whole team read it as a team and together. And that gives me chills, because when you as a team are listening to each other and practicing these things, then together as a team, you're going to get stronger. So the other thing that I would say then is to think about how this is also going to really help you think about having some of the more difficult conversations that are needed right now. It could be anything from challenging someone to go move out of their comfort zone, or it could be around having these really tough discussions that many of us are having around racial injustice and race. One of the research areas that I talked about is when you look at the different archetypes inside an organization, there are typically 4 different archetypes when it comes to disruptive leaders. And there's this one group called worried skeptics. These are the people who just look at any sort of challenge that are coming around and just go, I don't want anything to do with that. They are just resistant to change. And one of the key issues is to really sit down and listen to them. What is it that they're truly having problems with? And when they feel like you're trying to listen to them, you're not shoving them to the side in your hurry to create that disruption, then you're beginning to develop that relationship with them. And the second thing is to develop empathy. This is something that Ira mentioned. Again, you have curiosity about people, but then the other flip side is to have empathy for them. And this is the second principle that Dale Carnegie came up with. And I love, try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view. Now, this can be pretty hard to do. especially if that other person has diametrically completely different points of view from you. I recently did a broadcast on having tough discussions about race, and one of the commenters kept saying, just things I just fundamentally didn't believe in. And I really wanted to engage and try to understand, like, what was his point of view? What was his understanding? And we continued the discussion in messages on LinkedIn afterwards too, as well. And it was just a really good conversation. And I really try to set aside my own points of view, my own perspectives of things, because I really, truly wanted to stretch and to grow myself, to understand how somebody else could think so differently from me and try to understand where he was coming from. And this is the hard part. When we talk about empathy, this means setting aside everything that you believe in, setting aside your passions, your beliefs, your values, everything, all of that, to truly walk in the other person's shoes, to truly understand their perspective. And this takes a while. You could do this at a slow, at a very quick pace, like quickly understand, okay, tell me where you're from, trying to tell me your story. Okay, I get it. And I'm going to go back into my own comfort zone. Having deep empathy to truly understand where they're coming from allows you to then truly understand them, not try to change them, but truly understand them. And that will deepen your ideas of how you can strengthen that relationship and also how you can move together to a point of understanding. And then from there to a point of action. I'll give a quick example. At Altimeter, we use something that employed a lot of empathy, which is design thinking, which means that you have to have a lot of empathy for the person, for the problem that they're having, that you're all trying to do together. And in this case, it was my lead person in finance and accounting. And she was having a lot of problems getting all the other analysts to do things that they didn't want, like filing expenses in a certain way, do accounting codes. And, it's just a pain in the butt. Nobody wants to do it. And she came to me, she said, nothing was working. And she goes, I think I'm going to use empathy. I'm going to truly understand and really talk to them and be curious with them and understand what is it that is so difficult about the thing that I'm asking them to do. And by using that approach, she was able to modify the processes, modify her requests, ask them in a different way, because she truly took the time to understand what things were going on in their lives that made this so difficult. And I think that's such a great example, because when you can have everybody on your team, in your organization, slowing down, releasing that frustration of like, why doesn't somebody just understand, just do what I'm asking them to do? And to take that time to understand and have empathy for the other person is a key thing. So this is an activity that I recommend that you do to systematically develop empathy. When you're trying to understand somebody that you just really don't understand, instead of just saying like, well, just tell me your point of view, ask them, observe what they're saying, but also ask them, how are you feeling? Really tell me how you're feeling as you're going through this, because you don't want to just analytically and academically understand that. You want to understand really what's going through their heart, what's going through their soul as they're talking about this. How are they thinking about things? And what are they doing? What they say, what they feel, what they think, and what they do could be four completely different things. And to truly be curious about where they're coming from, to have that empathy makes such a difference. I want to emphasize how important this is when you're trying to create change in an organization, when you're trying to encourage somebody to take on and do something that's really scary and to move into this other space. And also, if you're trying to have an understanding if you're trying to create a better understanding around tough topics like diversity and inclusion and race and social injustice, having that empathy, that space created in your own heart for somebody else's position and point of view is extremely important. Because if you don't, you're just standing on two sides of the court and just basically yelling at each other otherwise. So this is exactly, I think, one of the most important things, especially with the social justice questions right now. you may agree or disagree, but around all the different issues, but to take the time and to understand someone's perspective of what it means, what it looks like, what it feels like to be an underdog, to be a person who is constantly feeling persecuted. To have that feeling, to know what it feels like, will be a huge motivator and understanding for what are the challenges around that. I know that as a woman, as a person of color, as having been the only person in the room, being, for whatever reason, we all have been in those situations. We all know what it has felt like to be the underdog. So we can use a little bit of that to understand and have empathy for somebody else who may be in a very different position. So I just want to see if there are any other questions here. Oh, lots of great comments here. I'm going to look at them really quickly. So Nicole has given a copy to your son as well. So glad that he loved it. Let's see. This is another great quote, and this I'm going to say from Chabili later on. It's a great quote from Dale Carnegie, because I was going to end with that quote, so I'm going to come back to that. Actually, I'm just going to read it right now. On dealing with people, you must remember that we are not dealing with creatures of logic. We are dealing with creatures of emotion, creatures bristling with prejudices and motivated by pride and vanity. And when we understand this is not about just the people we're connecting with, but it's also ourselves. And so understanding that this is not a logical way to deal with things. You can't talk about tough topics and issues with logic. These are emotional issues. So we need to understand each other on that emotional level. Matthew comments, I just read that curiosity is the way to learning. And I would argue that applies to truly hearing what others are saying. So if we are curious, we are actively listening. That's so true. So true. Let's see. Sana, thank you for emphasizing that you like the emphasis on active practicing of empathy. I love that. And Sanjay has a question. How do you communicate bad news while understanding others? Do you think they will be able to listen to you in the same way that you listen to them? I think, again, whenever you're trying to deliver bad news or unfortunate news, I think to do that with a full heart, with that empathy of how the other person is going to be receiving it, understanding that will absolutely influence the way that you deliver that. I think recently, if you want to go take a look at a great leader who understands and practices this, is the CEO of Marriott, Arne Sorensen. When they announced back, I think it was like late March, early April, that they were going to close the hotels and lay off and furlough almost all of their employees, he didn't just put out a press release. He went on the various social channels, put out a video. And the last minute is one of the best examples, I think, of a leader really practicing the empathy and displaying that. I mean, there couldn't be more horrible news than to say we're going to lay off 90% of the people who work in the company. And the way that he did it, though, was in such a human and personal way that it was clear that he felt a personal and deep connection and relationship with the people he worked with. All right. And then Nicole, I love this. One of the best questions leaders can ask their teams is, how can I help? And Matthew is agreeing with Sana Lee. Empathy is the key to truly connecting and removing to barriers. So just a couple things to just close out with this. Again, the two ageless, classless pieces of wisdom from Dale Carnegie. The first one is to become genuinely interested in other people. And the second one is to try honestly to see things from other person's point of view. So active listening, having curiosity, and then also having deep empathy for people. I find that these two areas, curiosity and empathy, are the foundations of great leadership because they form the foundations of relationships. And leadership is simply a relationship, people who aspire to create a huge amount of change and the people who are inspired to follow them. Just as to just conclude, these two things allow us fundamentally to allow us to understand each other. And when we have understanding, then we can accomplish great things. But until we have that understanding, nothing can move forward. And I want to end with this one quote from Dale Carnegie about change, but not about change that you put onto other people, but the change you have to create in yourself. Keep your mind open to change all the time. Welcome it, court it. It is only by examining and re-examining your opinions and ideas that you can progress. I love that because in the end, it's all about us. How do we change our opinions about the way that the world works? How do we change the opinions that we have of the people who work with us, the people we are trying to connect with? And by having curiosity and empathy, we will change ourselves. And it's only when we change ourselves and the actions that we are responsible for that we can begin to change others. So I wish you the best of luck practicing these two areas of wisdom from Dale Carnegie. We all know it, but actually doing it on a day-to-day basis is a totally different thing. Please stay in touch. I would love for you to share how you're doing with this. And I also want to encourage you to come and check out this new community I started for disruptive leaders called Quantum Networks. Come and join. It's a free community. And the whole goal there is to help us disruptive leaders achieve our quest of creating exponential change in our organizations and also in our communities and society. Thank you so much for listening to this broadcast, and I will talk to you soon. Have a great day.